This is why I always stress the importance of continuing to offer pushback. This is why I always tell you, do not be fearful, because this is not a moment of weakness for you. This is when you are strong. Today, the enemy is whoever didn't sufficiently mourn Charlie's death. Tomorrow, it's whoever they choose to blame for the divide, with people like Kimmel being a test run for broader censorship to come, just like the Germans did in 1933. Exactly. This is why I pushed back on this. I'm not a major fan of Jimmy Kimmel. I don't care about Jimmy Kimmel whatsoever. But I understand that the reason why they're going after Jimmy Kimmel is because the administration doesn't like any sort of pushback. The administration doesn't like feeling small. They don't like, they don't personally appreciate any kind of like belittling, because they're weak and they know they're weak. This is precisely the reason why they went after someone like Jimmy Kimmel, partially because of their incompetence. They didn't like, they bit off more than they could chew. They went after like a high prestige liberal individual in a moment where he had not said anything even remotely inappropriate. And they did that. And of course, there was a lot of pushback. And it's especially up because it directly goes against one of the most important principles that they were tasked with defending, which is comedy is legal now, freedom of speech. Like, these are the things that they presented themselves as defending. You can't turn around and say, we are going to kill cancel culture. A vote for us means a vote against cancel culture. A vote for us means a vote against woke, and then behave like woke cancel culture warriors, right? Normies don't respond positively to that sort of thing, especially because normies do not have the same level of investment in this ideological project. They just want things to be better. They want their finances to look better. They want to feel some kind of hope that the future looks brighter than yesterday. When the Trump administration doesn't actually fix any of the material problems, when cost of living is still a crisis, when healthcare is getting increasingly more unaffordable, when housing prices are more expensive than they ever have been at any point throughout U.S. history, and the administration has no interest or investment in fixing any of those problems. And as a matter of fact, they're actively farming what remains of the carcass of America, picking it apart like a bunch of vultures for Trump and his favorite cronies. A lot of people don't feel like they're a part of this movement. A lot of people don't feel like they've gotten anything in return. Do you understand? And it seems like Disney has made a decision to return Jimmy Kimmel. Last Wednesday, we made the decision to suspend production on the show to avoid further inflaming a tense situation and an emotional moment for our country. It is a decision we made because we felt some of the comments were ill-timed and thus insensitive. It's bullshit. Every single person knew that it was not insensitive. Every single person involved in the decision-making process was just simply afraid. We have spent the last days having thoughtful conversations with Jimmy, and after those conversations, we reached a decision to return the show on Tuesday. I really hope Jimmy Kimmel comes back and is being way, way more aggressive. It's good. This is due to the pushback that they received from the public, okay? This is due to the pushback they received from the public, chat. That's it. That's it. This is not about Jimmy Kimmel. This is about something much larger than Jimmy Kimmel. This is about this administration's interest in attacking every single outlet and every single person that has a negative opinion over the administration, which also is not limited to just the woke left or whatever. It's certainly a bunch of conservatives as well. It's not like when you go on CNN and you hear from farmers who voted for Donald Trump and they say, I can't believe what he's doing with these tariffs. It's destroying us. Those farmers are also criticizing Donald Trump. Are you also going to arrest them as well? Well, if the Trump administration got its wishes across, recognizing their unpopularity, they would do that, because their goal is to spark fear. Their goal is to design an enemy that is malleable, an enemy that can be branded an Antifa terrorist at any given moment. Tomorrow, it will be anyone and everyone, including Trump voters, Trump supporters, who actually don't like some of the policies because it directly harms them. It's that simple.
and support him, including Erica Kirk, who you saw so beautifully was on stage with the president in an unthinkable moment, in the midst of an unthinkable tragedy, and was leaning on the president for support during that time. And he was there to give it to her, as well as the vice president and many other.
If this administration is smart, they would move away from this like punishing speech attitude that they have, for the record. But I suspect that they're not smart. I suspect that they're very stupid. And therefore, I can totally see them doubling down on this and trying to crack the whip by forcing the FCC to take action, by demanding that the FCC take action, which would then, I hope, cause these mega corporations to engage the administration in a legal battle, one that they would win, by the way. All of these incidents cause the administration to recalculate, to reprioritize certain issues, because this creates a new battlefront, both an ideological battlefront and one like a legal battlefront. It takes up time and energy and investment, and it causes them to reconsider whether or not they should continue pursuing it. And it would not work if there wasn't public discontent. This is why I always stress the importance of continuing to offer pushback. This is why I always tell you, do not be fearful, because this is not a moment of weakness for you. This is when you are strong. If you weren't strong and if your voices weren't loud, then the administration would not choose to silence discontent like this. A strong administration that has a broad popular mandate would not be worrying with these silly things on the sidelines. It's that simple. Does Jimmy Kimmel being brought back matter in the admin story of his cancellation being due to low ratings? It doesn't matter. It's not about low ratings at all. It was fucking bullshit. Claim that this was a byproduct of low ratings. Like, if it's low ratings, then there wouldn't. You know what it is? When the administration says, oh, they canceled them because of low ratings, you know what that reminds me of? Socialism fails everywhere it's attempted. Okay. Then why do you intervene? Let it fail on its own. What do you mean? Right? If this was going to, if Jimmy Kimmel was going to fail on his own, if that is even a calculation for these mega corporations anyway, because I'm not so certain. I think it's more so about prestige that they like continue these sorts of programming. It's not because there's a lot of people watching and a lot of ad dollars that you can farm off of, like the real popularity of these shows or whatever. But if that was truly a consideration, that they would do it on their own. You didn't have to actually push the FCC to demand that this person get fired. Otherwise, you're going to take action, unconstitutional action, by the way. Additionally, Nexstar overplayed their hand here. Yes, companies like ABC rely on local affiliates to carry out their programming, but local stations depend on that quality programming to be relevant. Local news isn't enough to sustain viewership in these small markets Nexstar controls. That too. And yes, Jimmy Kimmel is back
on the air tomorrow. ABC says in a statement that we made the decision last week to suspend production to avoid further inflaming a tense situation at an emotional moment. But now, after having thoughtful conversations with Jimmy, the ABC says we reached the decision to return the show on Tuesday. So Kimmel's getting back to work.
Wow, Brian, that is significant, especially given that some of the players outside of Disney in a corporate setting, like Nexstar and Sinclair, they essentially have deals that allowed them to preempt his show, and that's part of the reason that it was suspended. Yeah. Do we know how they might react to this?
We don't, and that becomes the big question now. Will these local station affiliates choose to air Jimmy Kimmel Live, or will they continue to protest the comedian, even though the network is bringing him back nationwide? ABC does gently chastise Kimmel in this statement. The statement says, quote, the decision to suspend him, we made it because we felt some of the comments were ill-timed and thus insensitive. So they're very gently saying they disagreed with Kimmel last week, but obviously they're bringing him back as of tomorrow.
And we don't know, obviously, all of the considerations that went into this, Brian. But I would say leaders, obviously, at ABC and Disney have had the benefit of a few days of feedback.
Yeah, including from Disney employees who were very disturbed. including from Hollywood stars and showrunners, the kind of people Disney wants to work with, and from free speech groups, politicians, even some Republican politicians like Ted Cruz. We know the condemnation of Disney has been widespread. Now, what we don't know yet is what the counter reaction will be from President Trump and his allies.
That's a really good point. Brian, please stand by. Terry, your reaction to this news?
It's great news. It's great news. And I think you're absolutely right, and Brian is absolutely right. This was a community standing up for the rights of Jimmy Kimmel and all people who speak in public, entertainers and journalists and all of them. And it worked, at least with the head of Disney. And it makes good sense because they would have won in court. One thing that gets lost in this, you do not lose your First Amendment rights because you have a broadcast license. The Supreme Court has been clear on this. The government cannot take your license because of speech they don't like.
You were talking about Katharine Graham when the news broke, and these are the considerations of these bigger companies about how they're going.
Yeah, I mean, there are degrees to this. I'm living out right now. Don't listen to me. There are degrees to this. There are still types of speech and different classes of people in the eyes of this administration. Those who this administration consider to be discardable, right? Migrants, for example. This is a major corporation that has the financial power to push back against the administration. And I was very worried, very concerned that this major corporation would actually cave to the administration's demands, no matter how unreasonable or unjust they may be. Okay? It turns out that there is enough pushback from the public that the major corporation decided probably not the best idea to capitulate to the Trump administration's demands. Now, having said that, there are still the attacks against free speech did not start with Jimmy Kimmel. The attacks on the First Amendment did not begin with Jimmy Kimmel. Jimmy Kimmel simply was seen by enough members of the public as an overreach. The attacks against the First Amendment have been ongoing, okay, around pro-Palestinian advocacy, even under the Biden administration, and certainly escalated under the Trump administration. And it is a real shame that mainstream outlets did not adequately cover that when it was happening. It's really frustrating. So remember, the fight continues. So it is upon all of us to tie back this attack on the First Amendment, this clear-cut attack on the First Amendment, back to the clear-cut attack that is ongoing against pro-Palestinian advocacy. Okay? We have to try and get people to recognize that this isn't just about Disney capitulating. This isn't just we cannot rely exclusively on big corporations to fight back. Yeah, we vote with our dollars. People are boycotting Disney and canceling their streaming subscriptions. I know, a lot of people did that. Google searches for cancel Disney Plus and cancel Hulu have spiked in the day since the network suspension. Some people were stating that they lost almost $5 billion in revenue in a very short period of time. I'm not so certain that this was a part of the pressure, but I mean, I'm sure it helped. Or stock price, not revenue. Sorry, yeah, their stock price fell. Their stock price fell. They lost $5 billion in market cap, so they lost value, not revenue directly. But I'm sure they lost some revenue, which is why they lost value as well. Do you predict Nexstar and Sinclair will air Kimmel, or will they continue the cancellation? I can see them continuing their cancellation because they're much more right wing and much more. They have more to lose. They can't appear to be resisting against the administration in any capacity because of the FCC and because of the merger that is imminent for Nexstar. Sinclair is already incredibly right wing. Nexstar is already incredibly right wing, and on top of that, they have a mega merger that's coming up. So, TPUSA spokesperson Andrew Colvett is saying Disney and ABC caving and allowing Kimmel back on the air is not surprising, but it's their first mistake to make. Nexstar and Sinclair do not have to make that same choice. Once again, I am, I guess, not so shocked, but still very much annoyed that this is the major mover and shaker event for a lot of people. I don't want to be the friend who's too woke, but, you know, these are consequential decisions being made, which is why I took it seriously at the time. But the fight is far larger than Jimmy Kimmel, okay? If your goal is to defend the First Amendment, if your goal is to defend free speech, you must understand that this extends far beyond This extends far beyond just Jimmy Kimmel losing its time slot, but it's good. It's an eye-opening moment for a lot of people. A lot of people who don't really give a shit about Jimmy Kimmel either, by the way, but they saw, it's not like Jimmy Kimmel had this many loyal fans, myself included. I don't give a shit, right? But the reason why a lot of people got mad, even conservatives, as a matter of fact, got mad. Ted Cruz was like, this is crazy. This is mafia shit. The reason why they were doing that, the reason why they were saying that was because there are still Americans who value the First Amendment. There are still Americans who value freedom of speech. Now, the Trump administration has made a calculation that Americans that value the First Amendment and free speech also are very racist. So they're racist enough to not give a shit when it is eroded at the point of immigration enforcement and it is eroded at the point of pro-Palestinian advocacy, right? And they have been somewhat successful in that endeavor. They have revoked student visas. They have denied visas to people, not on the basis of like being too critical of Israel, but also on the basis of like, being critical of Charlie Kirk even, right? That's a real thing that's taking place. So it is upon us to remind people that this is not like just this is a victory that should galvanize us, and we should use the renewed enthusiasm to continue pushing back against this administration's unfavorable policies that represent a change in the way that we value the First Amendment, that represent an erosion of the freedom of speech.
To handle this and how they're going to think about it, they do have the benefit of some history as they do consider these moves.
Right. Well, Katharine Graham, when Nixon threatened to take her FCC, the Washington Post FCC licenses, they had some local stations. It was a main source of income. She published them anyway. She said, forget about it. And that kind of corporate courage is rare, especially in the face of an administration that exceeds by many orders of magnitude any other presidency trying to silence speech it doesn't like.
If we still have Brian, I want to go back to him because one of the interesting bits of reporting that we got over the last few days was that Kimmel was actually preparing a monologue that would up the ante against some of the feedback that he got from the Trump administration. I mean, can you imagine, Brian, what might be formulating in terms of a response when he gets back on the air?
Right. Kimmel wanted to defend himself. So now Tuesday night's monologue becomes even more interesting. What he will be critical, and it might affect what local stations decide to do going forward.
Yeah, certainly will. I want to know what you think, Terry, about just sort of the moment that we are in when it comes to free speech. And I also want to play a moment from the White House press briefing today. This was a correspondent for Turning Point USA Frontline, associated with the group that Charlie Kirk founded, who asked the White House press secretary what her message is to Americans who are too afraid to express their beliefs. Here's a brief part of what Caroline Levitt said.
We have a right to free speech in this country. The president supports it. It is protected by our beautiful Constitution. And Americans should not cower in fear. They should rise up in courage to continue speaking the truth.
What do you think about what you're hearing from the White House there as we just get this news that Jimmy Kimmel will return to air tomorrow night?
Right. Well, see what the White House says. Everybody should speak up except the ones that the president doesn't like. He just barked at my former colleague, Jonathan Karl. Maybe we'll come after you because
Yeah, this is the thing, okay? When it's a white dude who's rich, who's a Hollywood guy, and he gets silenced like this, he gets suppressed like this, then all of a sudden it is a reminder for a lot of people that are also in the same position, if not as popular as Jimmy Kimmel, to go, oh shit, they're gonna come after us too. Does that make sense? Like there's a class interest here, not class in the Marxist sense, but there's a class interest that these guys do not have, a sense of solidarity they do not have for their counterparts in Gaza, for example. When Israel murders relentlessly hundreds of journalists in Gaza, they do not give a shit. There's not a single peep from any of these monsters, okay? But for Jimmy Kimmel, obviously, they're going to be like, well, this is really messed up. You know, they're coming for all of us. They're coming for all of us. We got to do something about it. And this shows once again that the mainstream press does have a lot of motion still in getting this kind of information and creating an environment of panic, necessary panic in the eyes of many Americans. Okay? This is why I'm so frustrated with the media coverage surrounding all things related to Israel.
I don't like the content of your news coverage. All of this is bedrock First Amendment rights that we all have. And I think they've overreached here. Most Americans, even many who support President Trump, did not like the kind of gangster talk that the head of the FCC said, you can do this the easy way, you can do it the hard way. And they understand how precious this right is, even for people that they disagree strongly with. There's good common sense about our First Amendment rights, and I think Trump is running up against that.
Yeah, Senator Ted Cruz said it was out of Goodfellas, to your point there. Terry, thank you so much for being with us. Really appreciate it. And this is the breaking news just in from Disney.